Did you know that approximately 108 million people were killed in wars during the 20th century alone? That's more than the current population of Germany and France combined. A staggering figure, isn't it? War, a term that sends shivers down the spine, has played a pivotal role in shaping human history. It's a dark tapestry of power, ambition and devastation that has left indelible marks on nations and their people. From the bloody battlefields of antiquity to the high-tech warfare of the modern era, conflict has exacted a heavy human cost. Lives lost, families torn apart, civilizations brought to their knees. Yet we seldom pause to understand the true scale of these calamities. The stories behind the numbers, the faces behind the statistics, the shocking reality of war. So buckle up as we delve into the top 10 worst wars in human history. Rewind to 431 BC, the Peloponnesian War, a brutal conflict between Athens and Sparta, devastated ancient Greece. This war was more than just a battle for dominance or resources. It was a clash of cultures, ideologies and ways of life. Athens, the epitome of democracy, art and philosophy, stood against Sparta, a military powerhouse focused on discipline and strength. The conflict raged on for nearly 3 decades, showing us the terrifying resilience of human strife. The war's roots dug deep into the heart of Greek society, stemming from power struggles, fear and resentment. It was a series of disastrous events, like the plague that decimated Athens or the disastrous Sicilian expedition, that turned the tide of the war. Its consequences were far-reaching. It marked the end of the golden age of Athens and left Greece vulnerable to the rising power of Macedonia. This war set a precedent for the destructive potential of conflict in human societies. Fast forward to the 14th century, the 100 Years' War, a series of conflicts which actually spanned 116 years. This war, a long-lasting battle between England and France, was instigated by a dispute over the French throne. The English king Edward III claimed the throne, initiating a century-long struggle that saw some of the most iconic battles in history, like the Battle of Crécy and the Battle of Agincourt. The war was not a continuous battle, but a series of clashes interspersed with periods of relative peace. Yet the impact was profound. The 100 Years' War marked the end of medieval warfare, giving rise to more modern strategies and technologies. It also reshaped the political map of Europe, increasing the power of France and diminishing the influence of England on the continent. This war forever changed the face of European politics and warfare. Next stop, the 17th century. The 30 Years' War, one of the longest and most destructive conflicts in European history. This was not just a war, but a series of wars fought primarily in Central Europe from 1618 to 1648. It all started with religious tension. The Protestant Reformation had thrown the Holy Roman Empire into turmoil, and the Catholic Habsburgs were at odds with the Protestant states. But it wasn't all about religion. Political ambition and territorial disputes also played their part. Major events? Oh, there were many. The defenestration of Prague, the Danish intervention, the Swedish intervention and the French intervention, each one a grim chapter in a brutal saga. The effects of the war were profound and far-reaching. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648 redrew the map of Europe and shifted the balance of power. But the cost? Staggering. This war resulted in the death of approximately 8 million people, forever changing the course of European history. Crossing the Atlantic, we arrive at the American Civil War, a conflict that threatened to tear apart a young nation. From 1861 to 1865, the United States was embroiled in a bitter internal struggle, a war ignited by deep-seated disputes over states' rights and slavery. In the East, key battles like Gettysburg and Antietam left indelible marks on the nation's memory. Meanwhile, in the West, the Siege of Vicksburg and the Battle of Shiloh played pivotal roles in the Union's victory. The war's aftermath was equally momentous. It led not only to the abolition of slavery, but also to a period of reconstruction aimed at rebuilding the shattered South. Yet, this era was marred by racial violence and political upheaval. So, the American Civil War was not just a war, it was a crucible, a transformative period that shaped the United States as we know it today. The American Civil War remains the deadliest conflict in US history. Now we enter the 20th century with World War I, also known as the Great War, which involved more than 70 million military personnel worldwide. World War I, a cataclysmic event that spanned from July 1914 to November 1918, was primarily a European conflict, but it soon engulfed the world. The principal antagonists were the Central Powers of Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria against the Allies, which included the United Kingdom, France, Russia, Italy, and later the United States. The causes of World War I were a complex tangle of alliances, rivalries, and tensions. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary by a Serbian nationalist sparked a chain reaction that led to war. But beneath this spark lay a powder keg of militarism, imperialism, and nationalism ready to explode. Major battles in World War I were unlike anything seen before. The Battle of the Somme, Verdun, and Ypres were characterized by trench warfare, where armies dug into the earth, creating a static front line. These battles resulted in massive casualties, with the Battle of the Somme alone accounting for over 1 million lives lost. The outcomes of World War I were momentous. The Central Powers were defeated, empires crumbled, and new nations were born. The Treaty of Versailles formally ended the war, but it also sowed the seeds of resentment in Germany, which would later lead to World War II. The impact of World War I was profound. It led to significant political changes, with monarchies toppling in Russia, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. It also led to the rise of the United States as a world power. Most importantly, World War I marked the beginning of modern warfare. It introduced advanced weaponry and tactics such as tanks, submarines, and chemical weapons. It changed the face of warfare forever, making it more deadly and devastating than ever before. World War I marked the beginning of modern warfare with the introduction of advanced weaponry and tactics. Barely a breath later, the world was plunged into World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history. A global catastrophe that lasted from 1939 to 1945, World War II was a war of unprecedented scale, complexity, and death toll. The causes of World War II are multifaceted and complex, a tangled web of politics, economics, and power struggles. However, two key factors stand out. The first is the unresolved issues from World War I, including the punitive Treaty of Versailles, that left Germany economically crippled and bitter. The second is the rise of aggressive totalitarian regimes in Germany, Italy, and Japan, led by figures like Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, who capitalized on national grievances to push their expansionist ideologies. The war's key events spanned across the globe, from the invasion of Poland, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, to the brutal battles of Stalingrad and Midway. Yet, it was the Holocaust, the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of other minorities by Nazi Germany, that stands as the darkest chapter of this period. Eventually, the tide of war turned. The Allied powers, led by the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom, pushed back against the Axis powers. The dropping of atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 signaled the end of World War II, but not without leaving an indelible mark on humanity. The outcomes of World War II were far-reaching. It led to the establishment of the United Nations, aimed at preventing such a global conflict from happening again. It also marked the beginning of the Cold War, a prolonged period of political and military tension between the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc. World War II reshaped the world, leading to significant political and social changes. It served as a stark reminder of the destructive potential of human conflict, the horrors of genocide, and the necessity for international cooperation. The question remains, have we learned from our past, or are we doomed to repeat it? Next, the Korean War, often referred to as the Forgotten War, which left Korea divided and millions dead. This conflict, spanning from 1950 to 1953, was a direct result of the ideological divide of the Cold War, pitting the North's communism against the South's democracy. The war was a brutal affair, with major battles like the Battle of Incheon and the Battle of Chosin Reservoir showcasing the ferocity and desperation of both sides. Beyond the battlefield, the Korean War brought about significant geopolitical shifts. It solidified the United States and the Soviet Union as global adversaries and led to China's emergence as a significant military power. The war's aftermath also saw the installation of a heavily armed border between North and South Korea, known as the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ. Despite a ceasefire agreement in 1953, no formal peace treaty was ever signed. The Korean War remains unresolved to this day, with the Korean peninsula still divided. Let's not forget the Vietnam War, a controversial conflict that caused widespread protest and division. The Vietnam War, a protracted struggle between North and South Vietnam, was a tapestry of political intrigue, ideological differences, and a fight for independence. The cause? A fear of the domino effect, the spread of communism in Southeast Asia, and the key event, the Tet Offensive, a massive surprise attack by the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces. This war was not just a military conflict, it was a war that tested the moral compass of nations, a war that sparked a global outcry for peace and justice. The effects? They were profound and far-reaching. An estimated 2 million Vietnamese civilians and over 58,000 American soldiers lost their lives. The war left an indelible mark on the psyche of both nations, causing social and political upheavals. The Vietnam War remains a painful chapter in both American and Vietnamese history. Finally, the ongoing War on Terror, a global conflict with far-reaching consequences. Originating in the early 21st century, this war is unlike any other in history. It's not a battle between nations, but rather an international endeavor against non-state actors, primarily extremist groups perpetuating acts of terror. The roots of the War on Terror can be traced back to the horrifying events of September 11th, 2001. This tragic day, which witnessed the loss of nearly 3,000 lives, changed the face of global politics and security forever. In response, the United States, under the leadership of President George W. Bush, initiated a global campaign to dismantle terrorist networks, primarily Al-Qaeda at the time. A significant event in this war was the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, aiming to dismantle the Taliban regime that had provided sanctuary to Al-Qaeda. This marked the beginning of America's longest war, a conflict that lasted for 2 decades. However, the War on Terror didn't stop there. It extended to Iraq in 2003 under the pretext of dismantling weapons of mass destruction. This invasion opened a Pandora's box, leading to the emergence of numerous extremist factions, including the infamous Islamic State, or ISIS. This war has had a profound impact worldwide. It led to significant changes in international laws, human rights policies, and surveillance technologies. This ongoing conflict has also been marked by controversies and debates about its effectiveness, legality, and ethical implications. Despite the killing of key figures such as Osama bin Laden and Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the War on Terror is far from over. Extremist ideologies continue to persist, and new groups emerge, keeping the world in a perpetual state of vigilance and uncertainty. The War on Terror continues to shape our world in profound and often troubling ways. It raises thought-provoking questions about the nature of warfare, security, and the fine line between protection and intrusion into personal freedoms. It also prompts us to reflect on the universal quest for peace and the complex challenges that stand in its way. As we reflect on these wars, it's clear that conflict has played a significant role in shaping human history. From the long, drawn-out Peloponnesian War to the devastatingly widespread World War II, we've seen the human capacity for both destruction and resilience. We've seen nations rise and fall, ideologies clash, and societies transform in the face of adversity. Looking back at the 100 Years' War, the American Civil War, and the War on Terror, among others, we see a recurring pattern of discord, power struggles, and human suffering. Yet, with each war, there also emerges a glimmer of hope. The hope for change, for peace, and for a better tomorrow. These conflicts serve as stark reminders of the lessons we need to learn from history. They underline the importance of diplomacy, negotiation, and understanding. As we continue to navigate the 21st century, It begs the question, can we ever truly break the cycle of war?